Joining us now in studio, Executive Vice President and General Manager Nick Caserio. Nick, good to see you.
Fellas, good to be here.
All right, we've got a huge game with the Colts coming up this week. Massive outing on Sunday. Let's review Green Bay first. You're right there at the end. A lot of things went wrong throughout the day. Had a chance to win, unable to pull it out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Regardless of what happened during the course of the game, there were some ups, there were some downs. We did some good things, did some things we probably would like to have back. Still had an opportunity to win the game there in the fourth quarter. Went down there, kicked a field goal to go up, and then Green Bay was able to move the ball and get in position there, kick the game-winning field goal with no time left. So we were on the opposite end of basically what happened in Buffalo a few weeks ago. So credit to Green Bay, really good football team, number of good players, very well coached. So we knew it was going to be a challenge going on the road playing against them, and the game kind of played out about how we thought it was going to go. So they made some plays, and we made some plays, made a few more plays in the running game than we did in the passing game. Kicking game really kind of kept us in the game between the kicking game and the turnovers, the takeaways on defense. So that's all you're really hoping for, is have an opportunity to win in the fourth quarter, put ourselves in a position. In the end, Green Bay made a few more plays.
Nick, let's talk about those two things, kind of the good and the bad of it. Run game, really good. I mean, Joe had a number of seams, 2 touchdown runs, were really well blocked. Tight ends did a nice job. Pass protection, not as great. Kind of how do you break down those two, and how do you – I know it's tough. You're not always going to have them both at the same point, whether they're both bad or both good, but the way that the pass protection was versus the way the run blocking was, it was like really good, not so good. How do you kind of – how do you look at that?
Yeah, sure. You really have to look at everything, but when you look at it, in the end, the passing game is about third down, so it goes back to situational football. So our ability to kind of execute situationally in those third down situations. They did a good job stressing some things. We had some errors on our end that are easily fixable and correctable. So there's going to be some things that pop up during the course of the game. We're going to have to get them fixed. That's part of the job. Go back after the game, look, what do we do well? What are some of the areas we can improve? Can we make some modifications and adjustment? And then figure out like what we can carry for the next week. And then what are some things that we're going to do different that are specific to the opponent, which in this case will be the Colts.
Yeah, because when you run the ball as well as you did, you'd think play action and those things would go really well, but it didn't go as well as you wanted to throwing the football.
Yeah, just never really got into probably as good of a rhythm as we would have hoped. So had our moments, had some chunk plays there, you know, completion of Schultz earlier in the game on the over route. So it was kind of sporadic, but in the end, still had an opportunity to win the football game.
Right.
Didn't turn the ball over, which is always a good thing. And possessing the ball was one of the focal points for us offensively, so we're able to do that. It really, all these games, and we've talked really religiously on this show, come down to situational plays that come down to third down, come down to the red area,
right,
and then the whole turnover situation. So when you look at that game, Green Bay converted in a red area. We had the 2 stops in the red area, and then third down was about a wash with the advantage in the takeaways, and then it came down to really a situational play at the end. So that's football. You look around the league, that's what it is. When we talk about the Colts, when you look at their season, every game has been a 1-score game. So that's what this league's about.
How important is it for everybody in the organization to look at those positive things and continue to do those, yet correct the things that need to be corrected and not beat yourselves up too much, knowing that, hey, you're 5-2 and it's a huge opportunity on Sunday?
There's always a natural inclination either way. You win, you feel a certain way. You lose, you feel a certain way. In the end, in some respects, there are a lot of similarities. So you just, maybe your outlook, maybe your mindset, a little bit more jovial when you walk in the building. But by and large, look, one team's going to win, one team's going to lose. It happens every week. You got to come in with the right mindset, have a very, I would say, be purposeful, and have a good outlook and have a good process, and just be honest with ourselves and realize the sun came up. So we should all be excited to be here and try to get back to work and try to improve and just try to get ready for the next opponent.
We're 5-2, and there have been years we've been sitting at this table, we've not been 5-2. So looking at it from that perspective as well, you know, I'm obligated to ask you about a rookie of the draft or something along those lines. So I'm going to ask you about Kalen Bullock. And I asked this of D'Amico the other day of what does the presence of Bullock, just his range in the middle of the field, how does that change things for him? And he said not so much for him calling plays, but he said for the other defenders knowing, hey, look, if we're sticking in coverage, we know the ball is going to be floating. He's going to go get it. When you guys were scouting Kalen, were those the things that you focused in on more than anything else? What did you kind of see that you thought would translate to him having some success early in his rookie campaign?
Yeah, we felt he was kind of a uniquely skilled player. So almost 6'3", 190 pounds, runs well, covers a lot of ground, started his career as a corner, then kind of transitioned there to safety. had really played since his freshman year, and he showed the propensity to get his hands on the football at USC regardless of the year. So anytime a player gets his hands on the football or is involved, it leads you to believe he has some level of awareness, some level of instincts, and a certain level of skill that goes along with it. So we just felt the overall composition of his skills fit with our group and would complement it very well. And even though he's a younger player, he's pretty mature. He goes about his work with the right mindset. I'd say Stephen A.'s done a really good job working with him and kind of getting him ready to play. And then when he's gone on the field, he's taken advantage of his opportunities. So when a player does that, and your teammates around you can realize, hey, we can count on that guy to hopefully do the right thing on a consistent basis. And then he has production behind it. I don't know, he's near the top of the league in interceptions, or as rookies, he's probably one of the top rookies in terms of taking the ball away. So he's certainly made progress from where he started to where he is now. So we're only 7 games into his career, whatever it is. He certainly has room for improvement, but he's made an impact when he's been on the field, and it's certainly helped our team and helped the defense.
Your defense is second in the league in total yards, and you go into that game thin at linebacker. Jake Hansen and Neville Hewitt, these are special teams demons, but we talked about Neville a little bit last week. He can tackle people, and so can Jake, by the way. Can you talk about those two, especially Jake, acquiring him? Lovey had him in college. Did you talk to Lovey at all about how Jake was in college when you evaluated him?
Yeah. Really can't say enough great things about those two players on Sunday. They were prepared, they were ready to go, they showed up, and they produced. Neville led us in tackles. I think Jake was second or third in tackles. So when you go back and look at the arc of Jake's career at Illinois, the biggest bugaboo was the durability and the injuries, right? That's the thing that kind of set him back, but very well thought of, highly well thought of. We actually took him even though he wasn't quite ready to play. But because of the person that he was, we had those conversations with Lovey. He thought very highly of him, just the overall person, his intelligence, his instinctiveness. And since he's been here, those have all kind of come to fruition and manifest themselves. So a lot of credit to Jake and Neville for the way that they prepare. They're very professional. And that's a good example of a player being ready to take advantage of their opportunity when they're called upon, understanding you really don't know when that's going to take place, understanding you're going to have a role each game day on fourth down, which when you get to the game on fourth down, that's going to give you an opportunity to maybe play offensively or defensively. So a credit to those players, credit to Billy Davis and Ben Bowling for the work that they did to get them ready to go.
Okay, most of the time, if not all the time that you've been on this show, when we ask you a question, we kind of have some idea of what you're going to say. I don't know the answer to this one at all, but we were totally confused during the game. There was that 15-yard penalty for unsportsmanlike on the Packers on the extra point. And we went, so Kaimi moves up 15 yards, but he kicked the ball out of bounds. And the ball didn't go to the 40, the ball went to the 25.
So you get double 15-yard
It's
penalty.
one of these nuances of the rules. So other than, honestly, that's the way they kind of set the rule up. So there's a tweak and a nuance because of the dynamic kickoff rules.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of leave it there.
So it's a 2-for-1 opportunity.
It's kind of a nuanced sort of situation. So I'm
so
sure you weren't the only one that probably wasn't wondering what the hell was going on.
Right.
We were confused.
Well,
we were all talking about it
because he kicked it out of bounds.
We talked about it, so we knew, hey, look, we're going to try to situationally handle this kick, and if it goes out of bounds, then they'll get the ball there.
Oh, I see.
So there was a little bit of strategy.
We were kind of close to that reasoning afterwards. Like maybe it wasn't on purpose, but they didn't, because of the penalty. There was probably something that said if they kicked out of bounds, it wouldn't hurt him that much. So that was an odd point of the game, like trying to figure that whole thing out. Why is the ball to 25? It's odd.
But we'll see if it actually happens again.
You did get some good special teams play, though, on Sunday, and that's something that I know you hang your hat on. You want that to be solid week to week.
It's a huge part of the game each week. So let me say Tommy probably had one of his better weeks. So Tommy's had his moments, been a little bit up and down, but had a really good week of practice, and he carried that over into the game. Hit some balls that we covered. We got the muff. We got the ball. Made the tackle inside the 5-yard line. Kadar, DP, had another good kickoff return. So those plays are going to add up. And honestly, between those plays and the takeaways on defense, kind of kept ourselves in the game there a little bit, which just speaks to, at some point, every phase, every player, like their role is important. You never really know which play is going to impact the game. So want to try to go out there and just perform and execute. The theme of the week was execute and finish, and there were times that we did that, but in the end, we just didn't really finish well enough. But that's football. But credit to Bake and to Will and Frank for the work that they put in with that group.
I know we talked about offense a bit, and I hate to go full Chris Farley on Joe Mixon, but isn't he awesome, Nick? I mean, he really put together another good performance. Third in the league.
Does he live in a van down by the river too? Or
I don't think so. But if he did it, he would do it well, I'm sure. But Joe Mixon just has that ability to. I think the line probably enjoys blocking for him as well because he's going to make the most of every opportunity.
Yeah, Joe's a really good football player. He's been very consistent over the course of his career. He's been a very productive player, which is one of the reasons that, we were fortunate to add him to the team. So has a really good mindset, cares a lot, works really hard, cares a lot about winning, is very competitive. He usually is going forward with the football. So whatever the run is, it's 3, but then it's 4 and 5. So then it kind of puts yourself in a better situation. So versatile player, very tough. He's been a great teammate. He's been a great asset to our organization. So, we're fortunate that Joe's here, and hopefully he continues to help us in a positive vein.
7 weeks ago, he went for 159 against our week 8 opponent. I know a lot of people out there know the Indianapolis Colts, but Packers in the rear view. Let's do it. Scouting report on the Colts. What's changed? What's kind of moved around? We know there are some pieces that are still in place, but 7 weeks ago, different team. Potentially, what do you think about the Colts?
Yeah, no, kind of take maybe a little different tack, not necessarily go through but there are some things that, to your point, are a little bit different, some things that have changed. I think the one thing you notice about this team, they're a very battle-tested team. They've won 4 of their last 5. They lost their first 2 games. Every game has been a one-score game. So they've figured out a way to win these last 4 or 5 weeks, whatever it's been. That's credit to Shane and the staff for putting them in a position. And they've been dealing with a lot of injuries. I think some of the things that we're going to see, we saw week 1, but, Buck hasn't played here a little bit, but there's a chance Buck's going to be back, who he always presents problems on the defensive side of the ball. JT's been out here for a little bit. He's probably going to be back. Anthony played last week. So, Joe, I'd say, filled in very admirably. Joe went out there and showed why he's a really good player. And the one player that hadn't played, that didn't play week 1, which has been a significant factor, is Josh Downs. So Downs is a really good football player. I think even though he's only played 3 games, he leads them in receptions. So here's a guy didn't play, but he makes an impact at our offense. And it's kind of staying on the offensive side of the ball. Pierce leads the league in yards per catch, so he's not a high-volume catcher, but the way he impacts the game, they launched a few over our heads. He was the point of attack on a few of them. So the explosive play element has been a big part of their offense, and they've had a lot of success, in those areas. And then defensively, with Buck back, everything's going to start with Buck and Grover Stewart. So it kind of starts on the inside with those two, and then Zaire and EJ are they're second and third on the team in tackles, and Nick Cross at safety leads the team in tackles. And they've kind of had to deal with some moving parts there on the perimeter, the secondary. The one guy who they acquired, they claimed at the deadline, Samuel Omack, who was in San Francisco, has kind of stepped into that starting corner role opposite Jalen Jones with Brent's being out. And then that leaves Kenny Moore in his role. So they're a good team on both sides of the ball. And then Coach Mason does a really good job in the kicking game. And they blocked a punt against us in the first game. So their ability to rush and create havoc for the punt team, that's going to be critically important. So it's a really good football team that's battle-tested, that's won 4 of the last 5, and this game's for first place. So, to your point, going back to the beginning, Mark, there's a lot on the line here.
So Stewart played last week at linebacker and ended up having, I think, 18 tackles. And I bring that up.
Grant. Yeah, right.
Grant. And I bring it up because, A, he's got beautiful hair. Secondly, the fact that if he's got to play a lot on defense, does that take away from him on special teams? Because we know how good of a special teams player he is.
Yeah, he's an impact special teams player. Luby's an impact special teams player. So they'll probably have to figure out how they want to allocate their snaps. Carles has been in and out. The kid from Missouri can transition from some safety to linebacker. So they have some moving parts there at linebacker, but when those players are on a field, you got to account for them. And if Grant's involved in the kicking game, you got to make sure you handle him because he's a very disruptive player, no question.
There might not be a team in the league that has as big a difference when one quarterback comes in as opposed to the other guy. It's like a baseball team with a different pitcher in there, a knuckleballer, flamethrower. You have Flacco, if he has to come into the game, and the backup had to come in last year when the Texans played the Colts week 2, and it's happened numerous times with Richardson. So you have to sort of get ready for both, right? How are they different?
Yeah, you have to look at the offense, look at the concepts that kind of carry over. Maybe there's some things they skew a little bit more towards Joe if he plays, and the things that they skew a little bit toward AR if he plays or when he plays. So you have to be prepared for both. You don't want to spend too much time kind of overanalyzing it. Just understand the players, understand their strengths, understand the skill sets of the players that are involved, and then just be prepared for whatever the situation is. So if you have to make an adjustment or modification based on who's on the field, then you have the ability to do that because at least you have some film as a reference point. You can see them in that system.
Nick, I always felt like the second game against a division opponent, it's always kind of interesting to me because if you lost the game, then obviously there's some things you might change as you go into it because of, well, you got beat through the run game or you got beat deep or whatever the case might be. If you won that game, well, there was a reason you were successful. You don't want to get too far away from that because, well, that was successful the first time you played them. It's only been 7 weeks as opposed to last year was a full season between the two games. How does preparation change from week 1 to week 8, even though, we ran the ball really well week 1, but they probably improved against that a little bit as they've gone forward. When you go in there, how do you kind of anticipate maybe what they might try and take away or might try and do given what they did in week 1 versus week 8?
Yeah, really what you're going to go back through and honestly look at all 7 games, how they played against the opponent, and then you'll go back to the common opponent, which in that case would be us, and try to figure out what are some of the things that happened. Are they fixable? Can they carry it over? Is there going to be a tweak or, an adjustment? So, again, you don't want to, overthink it. Yeah. So just understand, the game may be played a little bit different. Maybe you have a tweak to try to compensate for it. But you always kind of have to be prepared for the next thing. But in the end, you're going to come down to the core things that you feel you do the best and that your players are comfortable doing.
I wouldn't really ask this of the coaches, even though with the next opponent after the Colts, they kind of have everything ready to go so they can be ready to prepare for that game. But as far as the short week goes, Nick, and the organizational aspect of this, you have to get the trucks out early and set up the hotel early. It's a super short week and a pretty long trip. What about that part of it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the focus is obviously on the Colts, but we also have other people in the organization that are ready for the quick transition, to your point. Because after the game, then the next day, we got 2 days before we leave to head to New York to play a good Jets team. So the coaches will focus on Indy. You'll have operations staff and scouting staff will go through the advanced process and start to get ready for New York and some of the mechanics that are involved there. So you try to stay ahead of the best of your ability, understanding you have a short turnaround. So we'll have to handle Monday and Tuesday maybe a little bit different than we normally do. Wednesday's a travel day, and then you play Thursday, and it's a long trip, like you said. It's 3 and change, 3.5 hours, whatever it is. So, but you're always trying to kind of plan ahead. You understand when the schedule comes out, that's going to show up somewhere. So now we can put our action plan in place and kind of get ready to go.
Nick, this might be more a question for next week in some sense, but I would imagine that the preparation, because it is such a short week, that maybe preparation happens near the end of the week as you get ready for the Jets. It's the only team that's had a coaching change. So there aren't as many games with a new head coach, interim coach, whatever it might be. So how do you kind of handle that preparation? Do you look at just those couple of games? Do you look at everything? How do you kind of build everything together? Because they've had some changes. Devontae Adams comes in. They sign Reddick. How does that kind of play in with the fact they've had a new head coach with Jeff Ulbrich?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. It kind of goes back to what we usually talk about. All right, if there's any new players, starts with the personnel, and then just kind of look at schematically, how are they playing? When you watch the Jets, which, I've watched the Jets here a handful of games, just trying to stay ahead. Schematically, it looks like they're doing some similar things. They made some small tweaks. So I think the system is a system. You don't really typically do too many overarching things. You're not going to drop a new system out of the sky. So maybe take some things that are relevant and apply those. And maybe the coach has something that he wants to sprinkle in there. But I'd say systematically, it looks like there's a lot of carryover, other than there's some new players that could potentially factor in.
All right, so this Sunday is Andre Johnson Hall of Fame Ring Day, Nick. And I wanted to get your impressions from afar of Andre Johnson as you looked at him with the Patriots organization, because that's when he was playing, when you were at the Patriots organization. So what'd you guys think of Andre Johnson? I know you guys probably had conversations about all the players in the NFL.
I say this with the utmost respect for Dre because of how great a player he is, but he was a massive pain in the ass to defend because you had to allocate extra resources to him. So even if you tilted the coverage his direction or had a double or had a call to account for him, there was a good chance he was going to make a play. So to have a player that could impact the game that way, I would say him, Randy Moss, you could put them in that kind of category where they change the trajectory of the game. I think the thing that stood out about Dre is just the way he played, his playing style, his mindset, how strong and physical he was, combined with his athleticism. That's the reason he was in the Hall of Fame. So we had nothing but respect and admiration for Dre, and knew in order to beat the Texans, if you didn't handle Andre, essentially you had no shot. So everything that he's earned, he deserves, but we held him in the highest regard without question.
He's a unique type, right? Because training camp, he was at one practice, and I saw him standing right next to Stephon Diggs, who's an elite receiver, and Stephon looks like his little brother almost. Andre's that big a target.
There's not too many receivers that are built like Dre, in the history of the game. So, which is why he was as effective and productive as he was.
So when he's at University of Miami, everybody recruits, everybody goes down there, scouts down there all the time. I got to thinking about this because 2024 in college football has kind of changed a little bit. So I've been thinking about this and getting your opinion. The two service academies are outstanding. Army and Navy are incredible.
They're undefeated. Both teams
They're both
undefeated.
undefeated. How do you scout them? Because I know the rules are different. How do you scout them, Nick? Same?
Yeah, no differently. You have access. You can still get to campus. You can watch practice. And then you'll have a few that will show up potentially at the All-Star games.
Yep.
A few years ago, I think Andre Carter, who's a Houston native, showed up
from
down at
Army.
the Senior Bowl. So if you're a good football player, there's a good chance Jim Nagy's going to find you and try to get you down in the Senior Bowl. Or the East-West Shrine, they'll get you out there. So no change. Again, we've gone through periods what the rules are. Are they eligible? Are they not eligible? Are they going to be able to play? But, I mean, what those programs do, I mean, is absolutely incredible. It's a credit to our country. It's a credit to the coaches that are there. And you're just dealing with a different type of individual that essentially is representing our country. But they obviously have a lot of good qualities that you would want to have on your football team. So there's really no material change to your process. Other than, I mean, it looks like, I mean, they're including the Air Force as well.
Yeah.
I think all service academies, they're not undefeated. Army and Navy are undefeated. I think Air Force is having as good a year as anybody as well.
Yeah. Have we ever had a service academy player here? I can't remember.
Player, I don't remember.
Mark would know. If Mark doesn't know,
I know that's why I'm going to the source here. I figured he would be the one. Good football teams.
Yeah,
Very
but
good.
sometimes we have guys who have been here. I'm thinking, oh, yeah, I forgot about him. But that's a long time ago.
A long time ago.
Nick, very important hypothetical question for you right now.
boy.
This is crucial, okay? Let's just say your daughters say, you have to have a piece of Halloween candy. Like, you have to have this. What is it going to be? You get to choose.
The pain on his face.
You get to choose because you're not going to be here. None of us.
Yeah, that's right.
We're not here for Halloween, but we're going to come back. They're going to have the candy, and you have to eat something that they have. What would you pick?
my least favorite holiday. I'd probably take a shot at a Tootsie Roll. I mean,
Okay.
I'd probably take like
It's
one
tough
shot.
on the teeth, though. Jeez,
Yeah, it's
the
horrible.
fillings
But
or whatever.
if I had to pick one, which I wouldn't, because usually the instructions are, you have too much candy, we have to give away more than half of it, and of course they have a nervous breakdown and go, "No, we can't. We're going to eat it." And I said, "Well, just pick your spots."
Man,
So,
that's a high tax rate to give away half of it.
Really?
3/4. Like,
Yeah.
you can't eat that much candy
That's true.
over the course
that's
of however many weeks
That's
and months
probably
if you want to keep your teeth.
That's probably the right thing to do. That's probably the right thing to do. Okay, so if you had to dress up for Halloween, what was your
here we
favorite
go.
Halloween costume as a kid?
Well, I don't dress up often, but
Yeah.
if I was forced to dress up, when actually my wife and I were dating, I had to go to a costume party, at her apartment. So I think I dressed up as like a pilot, like a Top Gun pilot.
okay.
So that's all I had to do was put on like a
That's-
shirt,
yeah.
a pair of wings, and some sunglasses. So I really
good
didn't have
one.
to do anything.
fit that,
But it
yeah.
looked like I was part of the costume party. So
Yeah. Okay.
Next
That's
time you
good.
can be Tom Brady. It's pretty good. Okay. Nick, thanks a lot for joining us. Good luck this week.
thanks, fellas.